Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. Today's session is called When AI Turns Users into Contributors. I'm Stuart Newsom, and as always, we're glad to have you here. Now, I have four guests today, and they all have firsthand experience in the evolution of this phenomena that we're going to talk about. So joining me are Gretchen Manica, who's VP of Enablement. We have Lindsay Nelson, who's also our product marketing leader. We have Jeremy Gluckman, who's our senior product marketing manager, and Viveka Jagadisan, who is our enablement manager here at Infinix. I want to thank all of you for being here. So how's everyone doing?
Good. Excited to be here.
Awesome.
Great.
Great.
Thanks for the intro.
Yeah. Typically we have one guest, maybe two. Four guests is probably the most we've ever had. But I want to say I'm glad y'all are here. These are my people. So I'm excited, just as excited to have them here as they're probably as excited to be here. So with that said, I want to kind of set the stage before we jump in. I want to explain why I wanted to have this conversation. Um, this topic came out of realistically a discussion I was having with a few friends, and they are all from different professions, different industries, and they all use AI. Where it helps, where it's overhyped, and how people are actually using it. And we had a really deep discussion about it. But one thing that really struck me or stuck out to me was what feels different about AI. It's not necessarily the speed. It's that the traditional user of software can now become more of a contributor. That's why that's in the title, and not just a benefactor. It's not just someone moving through, say, a workflow that somebody else has designed, but someone who can absolutely shape drafts, ideas, processes, analysis, and the way work actually gets done. So they're actually contributing, taking control, if you will, of their own workflows in a way. So that shift really matters in every industry, but especially in revenue cycle, where leaders are trying to do more with less without losing judgment, oversight, or expertise. And that's what AI really brings to the table, is how can we do more with less, but now the typical user is in control of that. So get ready as we unpack this new reality. But before we get started, just a quick reminder before we get rolling. If you have any questions during this discussion, please drop them into the Q&A. We'll leave time near the end to take a couple of audience questions. And so I just want to give the panelists a heads up that sometimes we have questions that are very interesting. So if you don't know the answer, that's okay. We'll collaborate. We'll talk through it as the best we can. But also, I'd encourage comments. If you have an interesting comment about if this is something you're doing in your industry or in your organization, please share some different ways where you're contributing to the workflows using AI. We'd like to read those off as well. So, all right. So, everybody ready? All right. So let's dive right in. So the first question I want to have, and I'm going to ask these questions general to everyone, and they're going to answer. What feels different about AI compared to other technologies we've adopted in the workplace?
Yeah, I can kick us off with this one. It's a really interesting and timely question, Stuart, that I've been thinking a lot about. I think, it's really the first technology, kind of in line with the title of this discussion, where as a continuous learning exercise, or kind of a new kind of adoption and maturity curve, I really feel like I am a contributor, a collaborator, not just a user. So with this team internally at Infinix, in contrast to maybe an old way of running go to market, you're following workflows that maybe someone else has designed. You're using CRMs, project management, productivity apps, filling out fields, clicking steps, executing tasks. The tools tell you what to do, which there's still an aspect of that in day-to-day work. The main shift is that now I'm shaping the output, and AI has become a thought partner. It's not about learning commands, it's about communicating what I need and refining the context and orchestrating the results. So, whether it's like, I know a really common use case is meeting agendas, pulling insights from call recordings, organizing research, writing marketing materials, pressure testing messaging. There are a myriad of applications. Um, but it's a whole new way of working. It's changing the way that I can actually contribute. So I'm excited to hear from the rest of the team. You know, what ideas are we shaping? What concepts are we testing? And also, um, it's not just a new tool to learn, it's a transformation that even we're helping our customers navigate. So you're in good hands with this group, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone else has to share.
So I think
Awesome.
another point too, there, Jeremy and Stuart, would be from a team perspective. I think it also helps with this, or I've seen this kind of shift in confidence. So people who may not have like raised their hand before and said, "Hey, I've got this first draft, I'm ready to go," or "Here's my point of view," or "Here's my recommendation." It doesn't mean that like it's final or perfect, but they're raising their hand with more confidence in that kind of V1 because they have AI as that partner. Does that make sense? I think that's kind of where I've seen it's a cool thing to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, I would say at its best, when rolled out at scale, everyone can feel like they can contribute as a builder, obviously with guardrails and governance in place. So I've definitely seen that on this team at Infinix, which is really exciting as a relative newcomer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's where, we were trying to take this was, what feels different, because other technologies, it is where, and you're handed a piece of software, you're given a training manual, maybe you're trained on it, and it's a bunch of clicks. You follow that workflow. This is just it's a transfer of power, if I should be so bold or so strong to say that, in a way where you don't have to wait on a programmer. You don't have to wait on the next update. That you have these tools in place where you can actually facilitate, the work that you need to get done and make that work faster. Um, so just I want to go ahead and move to the second question here. How is AI changing what the average professional can actually do? And where does human judgment still matter most?
So I think for that one, if you guys are okay, I'll kind of kick us off. But I think that it's expanding what the average professional can do without needing to be an expert in every single area. So it kind of lowers those barriers for drafting content, gathering information, or organizing complex ideas. So like people can be more contributors and problem solvers and not just like a task executor. So for me, it's I think that or I guess what I would say is like the key thing is like AI doesn't replace judgment, but it actually requires it. So um especially in healthcare and revenue cycle, like that context matters so much. You're dealing with different departments, you're dealing with different things like compliance and financial impact and the patient experience. And those aren't areas that you can just take whatever AI is spitting out at face value. So, what I've seen work best is when a team kind of treats AI as like, again, that V1 or that starting point and not the actual endpoint. And then that value comes from how we review it and refine it. And then we apply like our domain knowledge and our domain expert. So in a way, it's making our team stronger because our people know how to guide it and then like improve what it's giving us and that outcome that we're getting from it.
And I would,
Yeah. Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
that story that Gretchen is telling is also borne out by the data that we're seeing coming out of job reports and hiring. So there's two trends I've seen that I'll highlight. The first one is overall in a hiring picture is that hiring for kind of like junior roles has been depressed generally, and hiring for senior IC roles has actually increased. And we believe that's because AI acts as a force multiplier for someone that already knows their domain well, understands the basics of their field. That type of person can accomplish so much more quickly with the leverage that the AI tool is giving them, whether it's writing really quickly, analyzing a bunch of data, writing code. When you have someone that really knows their domain well, they can achieve that outcome well. And as Gretchen, as you point out, that's extra important within the healthcare field, as there's all sorts of aspects from just basic like domain expertise to compliance, security aspects that can't, that you can't just vibe code away. You really need someone that knows what they're doing to check that out. And we also believe that's like part of why we're seeing the healthcare hiring trends that are actually somewhat different than the job market as a whole. There's actually increased demand for hiring in non-clinical roles that we've seen the last year, and we believe project will be carried out into this year as well. And we do believe that's because of the complexity. A knowledgeable revenue cycle expert is just as in demand as ever. And that's why, and we believe it really is because of that human in the loop part that's necessary, where you still need someone knowledgeable to do that exception handling as much as AI and automation can provide us leverage in terms of automating aspects of the revenue cycle. We found that in our own products and in terms of providing robust outcomes to our customers, that's why we try to keep that knowledgeable individual in the loop to really get the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when it comes to kind of maybe junior people coming into multiple markets, focusing on gaining more of a knowledge and expertise of what good looks like, right? What great looks like, understanding how to handle those exceptions rather than understanding how to execute just execute work. It's on having that higher level understanding of what quality output looks like. And then I would add kind of in the same vein of like people thinking kind of higher level thinking or maybe thinking more like a senior person or a senior leader is it encourages more systems level thinking. So, especially for leaders today, as you're thinking through how to optimize different areas of your revenue cycle, or for us thinking through how to optimize different areas of our marketing, we can think through like, where can we plug this in? How does this work in our broader system? How are we going to ensure that this is effective and plug in the right people with the right processes and kind of orchestrate the whole thing? And so, yeah, here at Infinix, we practice that both internally and with our customers in orchestrating all of these different components together. So I think the systems level thinking is more important now than ever.
Yeah, it's almost like AI isn't just a new tool to learn. It's a new way to think about what your role can be at a company or any organization. The nature of work is changing quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems as if, there's still what we're hearing, you guys say is it's a level of expertise that's already there, but it's just enhancing, that expertise. It's almost like, given some injection of power that it's able to now just force multiplier, like you guys said. You can go out and conquer tasks that would likely have taken you days, but now it's taking you just a couple hours. One of those friends I was mentioning in the intro, his work, I won't get into the details of his work, but let's just say it would take him, 2 to 5 days to do it. And now he can do it in just 2 hours. And he was able to build that. No one went out and said, okay, hey, build this for me, or built it for him to where he could actually consume the data and get it done in 2 hours. He actually developed it himself using AI. Now he's not a programmer, he's not a developer, he didn't write a single bit of code, but he was able to create a system and process in place, leveraging a certain piece of AI that helped him, speed up his work, but also the quality of work was much better because part of that 2 to 5 day process is proofing his work, making sure it's right, going through certain processes and approval processes. But this just knocked it out of the park. That was just one example that I thought of. Now, and we've been kind of talking about in general. The first two questions really covered just any industry with any profession out there. So I want to kind of shift it back now to revenue cycle because that's the industry that we are in. Obviously, our main audience is all going to be related to revenue cycle in some shape, form, or fashion. So, the third question I have for you is what should revenue cycle leaders take from this shift if they wanted to use AI well without creating noise, risk, or unrealistic expectations?
Yeah, so I think to kind of layer in on the systems level thinking, thinking through how are these different components coming together, it's also, are you using the right models, right? Because a generic model or a more general model like, you would get with Claude or OpenAI isn't the same as a specific model trained on, say, payer documentation or clinical documentation and knowing those nuances. So ensuring that you're, partnering with someone that has this very, specific models that will be able to perform these tasks and power these tasks is one. It's very important. Two is that auditability, that governance layer. So as you know, that compliance is very important here. So being able to have a record to track the AI tracked interactions, say, in the case of like a medical necessity AI solution, having those backing the reasoning for like a covered or not covered determination, or and also a system that is very cautious in the output that will be able to, ladder that up to a human person with that expertise, like we talked about earlier, and like just make sure that nothing inaccurate goes down is going to cause a denial or cause issues in the entire revenue cycle flow. So having that level, those guardrails in this industry is very important, and ensuring the accuracy of those models. So it all kind of combines together, but those 3 core principles are applied throughout any of these technologies. Those are kinda like the non-negotiables, and something that is very hard to implement without the right partner, and it can take time to implement. I guess the one more thing I would say is that interoperability layer. So because of the complexity of all the different systems, being able to actually make it work in the real world is more complex because, the data itself may be pulled from, like, say, in the case of like an AI that can just pull information from a document and throw it into your system. Like that sounds fairly straightforward, but in reality, like the data in the document, one, it's kind of just could be anywhere on a page. There you have different document structures. The AI model needs to know how to read that. Two, the data might look one way in the document, but then it needs to be translated, and then it needs to know where to put it in your system. And all these systems are different, and there's different like kind of business rules and data rules across systems. So getting a little technical here, but just thinking through like these are the kinds of technical nuances that are important when you're considering how to apply AI in revenue cycle management.
I'll add to that when you're thinking about buying one of these technologies, it's so important to take what the vendor and salesperson is telling you with a grain of salt because it's so and almost you'll see that almost every revenue cycle company has very similar marketing. They're making very similar claims as to what they can accomplish. Like they'll say things like, we're automating prior authorization. But if you scratch a little deeper, you have to ask yourself, well, what does that really mean? What payers are you automating it for? Which aspects of the prior authorization process are you automating? What service lines? What CPT codes? What aspects of this are you really automating? And can you show me the proof that this is really happening? So really be a little cautious when you see these broad-based marketing terms and really make that salesperson in front of you commit to and show you evidence of what exact outcome is being accomplished for you and how and proof that that's really happening.
Exactly. That's a great point because you're absolutely right, Viveka. There's so much being claimed that AI, almost to the point where it's framing it where AI is going to solve everything. And we all know RCM is so complex it's not possible today. I'm not going to never say never, um, because amazing things are happening very rapidly. That's another thing about AI, that I've never seen a technology accelerate its progression as rapidly as AI. And I've been doing this a long time. I've seen technology come into the healthcare. Healthcare is kind of slow to adopt anyway, but it's really accelerating. But it's almost like there's this badge of, oh, we have AI, and it's on their, it's everybody's booth, it's everybody's marketing material, it's everybody's website. So to your point, you do have to do a deep dive and ask those critical questions. And then you find out maybe it's not AI after all. Maybe it's not as much AI. Maybe it's not as much automation as you thought it was going to be. But I will say that that's where that exceptions are always going to be a part of the problem. And those exceptions are going to always have to be handled by human specialists. And human specialists are still going to have to maintain and monitor. So it kind of goes back to where AI is not going to be able to do everything. I mean, there's been talk about staff replacement ad nauseum, not only here with our webinar and podcast, but also others that I listen to. So I think everyone understands that AI is not necessarily going to replace staff, but it is going to be like rethinking, reclassifying, retraining what staff can actually do. And this is an opportunity. I see this more as an opportunity for those who can kind of take this on and learn how to leverage AI to help them be more productive personally, but also, in their workspace.
Stuart, if I can tell a story around that.
Yes.
We actually had a gentleman who was, I believe, a building specialist in one of our departments, and he was actually able to use automation tools to automate a large like part of his workflows, which was around charge entry. Um and then I believe we also were able to take that automation to the next level and leverage our own internal RPA platform. If you guys want to provide some color about how that was done, but like individuals can really have a lot of leverage in terms of automating their own workflow and creating a lot of impact
Yeah.
just based
Yeah.
on what they know day to day.
That's excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think I know that in this specific case, one, they were doing their charges like they would get an HL. So this is specifically, a billing provider for multiple clients. So they would get those HL7 charges at the end of the week. They would go ahead and put those into the system at that time. There's all kinds of variances for these different systems and for the different documents. So that person would have to input those, and you can imagine with all those steps and all of this different variance, there's room for error, right? And that obviously is an issue. So by automating this, it enabled them to, one, reduce those errors, and two, to be able to improve that throughput, to do it on a daily basis instead of a weekly basis, and to ultimately reduce charge lag by making this whole thing faster. And in that case, we were able to do that for 56%, have a 56% access to all the documents that were coming in, all of these like pathology reports coming in and the patient data, entering it into the system. And as you can imagine, that saves a lot. That's more than half. So
Wow.
it's
And
awesome. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Viveka.
that is such a powerful example of AI as a force multiplier, where it's like human judgment, domain knowledge, and AI working together. So that's such a great example from our customers.
Yeah. And now that person, I believe, actually works in our IT department. So I think it's a great way to tie that loop of, like there are skills and tasks that are being automated now. But the great thing is when you build your own muscle of like being able to use those automation AI tools, that reskills you to actually be able to have even more impact in the workplace. So, um, something to think
Yeah.
about there.
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. And yeah, and so it kind of, leads me to the next question, which is kind of the wrap up question before we get to the audience questions. But what is one thing, and this is to everyone again, but what is the one thing that you would want a revenue cycle leader to remember from this conversation?
I can kick us off, Stuart. So I think one of the biggest things for leaders to kind of remember is that, at least in my opinion, is that AI really works best when it makes your people better, and we're not trying to work around them. So it, again, we keep talking about this force multiplier, that idea. So if you really focus on using it to support your team and build their capability and help reduce that kind of unnecessary burden, you're going to get so much more sustainability value. And, again, you're not using it as a replacement, but as a tool to help them. So I think that would be my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. Jeremy?
Yeah, I could add, I would say it's not just about handing people AI and saying good luck. It's about reminding people and bringing forth their domain expertise. Humans are needed and it's a partnership. So definitely continue to encourage that transformation with your teams. And it's more exciting than ever to contribute to and build with AI.
And I'll echo what one of your former guests, Neo, said when she was on the show, Stuart. She said, have an understanding of what you want to do with that AI, understand exactly what you want to accomplish, and then go figure out how to do that, whether it's creating automation or creating more visibility and insight. Have an understanding of what you want to do. And I'll add, have a realistic understanding of what that technology can accomplish, which isn't to poop on it because it can actually do a lot and be a huge force multiplier. But don't go in with AI psychosis and think, oh, I'm going to wave a magic wand. I can replace all my people with AI. That's not realistic. You want to understand what your exact organizational goals are, what can be accomplished by the technology and vendor in front of you, and what you're going to get out of it. So have that sobriety going in there along with the optimism.
Yeah, 100%, Viveka. I think I was thinking along the same lines, and to that end, keeping in mind that a lot of pilots fail. I think what is like not over 90% of pilots fail with AI. And I think it is partly because of those unrealistic expectations, because of maybe not being able to implement it within systems. Change management is very hard. So I think that's why choosing the right partner that understands your business, that can configure to your business and work with you to be successful, or brings the people with it to effectively implement the systems and deliver an outcome rather than just kind of getting a technology and then trying to make it work. It's that, I think, orchestration between all of the different processes and making sure everything fits together in a puzzle to achieve that outcome. So you come with the outcome you want, and then your partner knows that too, and then together you work towards that solution.
Wow, those are all great insights. I couldn't agree more with all of you. Before we wrap up, we are going to switch to audience questions. And these are kind of curveballs sometimes, as I warned you. I had to warn my panelists of this, but I think sometimes there's very straightforward questions, and we do have one here, and anyone can contribute. Um, for someone who understands the idea but has not really started yet, what is the best way to begin using AI so they can become a more active contributor in their work? And we've discussed some of this already, but just want to give y'all an opportunity to offer an answer.
Um, I'll pipe in. A great way to do that is pull up a tool. You could go to Claude AI or chatgpt.com right now and type in what your day-to-day responsibilities and the outcomes that you're accountable to accomplish are, and ask the AI to guide you with a series of suggestions but based on its capabilities, can it help you improve your judgment, improve the outcomes, help automate or streamline some aspects of what you do, and then have it act out some of those suggestions with you live.
Yeah, I love that. I would say also thinking through systems, because a lot of what AI can support is, like Lindsay and others described, that orchestration layer. So you're an individual contributor or you have certain specific skills, but you also can think systemically and build out those workflows. Um, and never to forget what makes us human. Like, what are the things that humans are uniquely positioned to do, and doubling down on those skill sets as well.
I
I
think
also think one thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
it's okay. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just gonna say, I think one thing, and this is kind of underrated, that has made me successful is just asking other people for help. Like, just be like, what do you like? I learn a lot from Jeremy and Vika and Gretchen on like, what do you guys think of this idea? And then they can kind of come back to me. So I think the AI usually gets me like 90% of the way there with being a thought partner for me. But then, I mean, talking about it with the team, getting buy-in, getting help, that's always great too. And it makes it more fun.
I think if you're a beginner, when I think back to when I very first started using it in my personal and professional life, it was really just like I started just thinking like, okay, where we're just like little baby steps, like taking it in steps. So, you don't have to come out as like this, you're automatically going to get it and be able to build some really cool process or workflow. Just start asking it. Like Viveka said, one of the things that we did in my personal life was we were thinking about going on a trip and we had the idea to ask ChatGPT just to help us plan it. And the response that we got, we were like, holy crap. And so like once you've done it a couple of times, then you really start getting interested. Okay, where can I now, like, it started in my personal life, but how can I use this in my professional life? Where can I lean on this? And then we're very fortunate at Infinix. We have strong AI initiatives. So not just for our customers, but our internal teams. So it was really cool to join a company that has these, different tools that we can all lean on. And it's made me stronger. And so I quick little story. I was in Sephora the other day and I taught one of the little girls that were there helping me. I bought one foundation and I wanted to know what that match would be on another. Instead of standing there for 30 minutes and trying them on my face, I was like, let's ask ChatGPT. And once we did it, she was like, oh my God, I'm going to use that for my customers. And it was so exciting. It was like, a mama teaching a baby. Like she was like, that was so quick and we didn't have to stand here. And when she went and got that shade, it was a perfect match. So just little things like that. Learn to just think about if it was a process that took me a while, some sort of AI help me? And that's kind of where I started and just have tried to continue to build.
Absolutely. And I can add to my personal experience when I first started doing AI, which was, just seemed like yesterday, but it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And, you know, I learned very quickly that prompts matter. So if you don't know what a prompt is, then you probably need to look it up. But I think adding to Gretchen's, take on, baby steps, that's the first step is learning how to prompt, because you do have to speak to AI like it's three. I think we've heard all this before. Because it's going to do exactly like you say. And it kind of takes me back to when I took, a software program course in college and the professor said, okay, I want you to write down how you would get up out of your desk and leave the room. And then he took it and everyone had to follow the instructions of what everybody wrote down and nobody made it out of the room. So you have to be specific sometimes, but sometimes you can be very general. I think it is much more intelligent than it was back when I was in college. But the point is just take a prompting course. They're all over the place. I mean, you can just look up prompting course and but those prompting matters. And I would, basically start there and you'll take off like a rocket.
I, I,
Go ahead.
can I just add one?
Yeah.
Because it kind of got me thinking. Like when you say the prompting, I feel like even before that, and this kind of calls back to what Viveka was saying. Like what you need to know what you're trying to do. You need to know what your workflow is today, and kind of have that mapped out. Like you need to have that organized process if you want to improve it. And like as you're thinking through how to apply this to systems, and that kind of goes into prompting it. And so then you can maybe prompt it, but also create like repeatable systems for, kind of automating that process or utilizing AI effectively. And so I guess, yeah, go take a course on prompting, but I would say that that's kind of the foundation is like if you know what you're trying to do, it's so much easier to then improve it.
Exactly. Yeah, excellent point. Yep. Okay, we have one more question. I think this has kind of been answered a little bit uh, um, in some of the previous responses, but what AI tools do you personally use today? And how do you know when a general purpose tool is enough versus when the work calls for something more specialized? Boy, we've seen this, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, I'll bite. I've loved using Claude AI as of late. I feel like there is so much power in terms of what you can accomplish with it. I think that you can really quickly wireframe up little software tools or assets, collateral. You can do fantastic text analysis. You can do desktop work. You can do so much in Chrome, like automating simple processes or tasks that might be repetitive and manual for you. So super powerful. Now, when does that break down and how do you know when you use a purpose-built tool? I think specifically in this kind of domain, when the risk of an error is actually really substantial and meaningful when there's compliance and security aspects related to it. Those are some situations where you need to look at a purpose-built tool. But I would also say just if you think that you could do it, just try doing it. Try vibe coding your solution. You will quickly probably run up against whatever the limitation is going to be. A lot of the time, prospects do end up coming to us when they've already tried to build internal tooling to solve whatever problem it is. And then, some months later, after they've sunk a couple $1 million into trying to develop a solution, they're like, okay, I think we need your help. So I would say go ahead and try it and see what the failure point becomes.
Yeah, and I
Yeah, I would oh, sorry. I would just say, like, to add on to what you're saying, Viveka, of testing those systems, when to give an example internally, and this isn't RCM, but, like, we're looking at how we can use AI for our presentations, right? How can we make those presentations, just faster to generate? Because that's a pretty good established use case at this point. So it's like we could use Claude has that capability, or we could use another purpose-built tool. Well, what are the differences between those? Well, the purpose-built tool might be more consistent, it might have a better UI, and ultimately, to me, that speaks to scalability. So I'm thinking, how can I have consistent processes across our entire program, and how is the tool going to enable that? So even just a kind of a simpler tool like a presentation building software needs those types of features or capabilities that can kind of enable that scalability and building a solution internally that's also scalable and having the team to manage that to make sure that it's scalable and to do like the training for it becomes a much bigger task sometimes than just choosing a purpose-built tool. So it kind of that's how I was have kind of weighed that decision and um how much are we relying on the human knowing how to use the tool and how much of a learning curve is that for change management? Like, is it going to fail, right? Is it realistic? What's that, I guess, user experience like? And can we realistically implement it on in the long term, right? Sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
no, no, I was just gonna point back to something that you said actually that I thought was very on point in terms of um the client example you were walking through, like where can you quickly get up to speed with the relevant context so that the AI can execute appropriately. And so that context piece, I think, is kind of where the decision often hinges. Would you proceed with a general commercial model or a more custom model, depending on what type of work you're trying to do? So I think that's always interesting to think through as you're looking towards prioritizing different applications of AI.
Awesome. Well, those are great questions, and I don't see any others. So let me check one more time. There's no more other questions here. So going to conclude here. And as we wrap up, the big takeaway is this, and we've heard a lot of big takeaways from here. So there's all kinds of things, but it's the fact that AI is not just changing the speed of work, it's actually changing the role of the user in the work. And what leaders do with that shift may matter just as much as the technology itself. So hopefully you've taken a lot of insights from this discussion today and you can apply them. If you have any additional questions, you can also reach out to us at any time. I want to thank our panelists, Lindsay Nelson, Gretchen Manica, Jeremy Gluckman, as well as Viveka Jagadisan. Thank you so much for coming on. I had to twist their arm to be here, but it was a great discussion. I think and we have these discussions all the time. This is nothing out of the normal for us. When we get together and we talk about this kind of stuff. So I said, hey, let's do this for an office hours. And I really want to thank all of you for joining us today for office hours. And be sure to visit our website at infinix.com for more resources, case studies, as well as insights and the solutions that we offer. And also go to Revenue Cycle Optimize podcast for more conversations and topics like this. So we'll see you next time on Office Hours.